my first Hotmail account, I don't know if everybody remembers their first email account. My first Hotmail account was, I think, Lennon, after John Lennon, because I was like 18. He was like, made it for me. She's like, you love John Lennon? So it's like John Lennon 1981, because it's my birthday. That was a big deal for me, man. I was like, thought it was really cool to have a pseudonym that was after my favorite Beatle. So,
That's my first email, so.
us oldies, us 38-year-olds are, that was a big deal for us. Emails now are just so, I don't know if anybody really cares as much. So, well, thanks for getting on. I wanted just to, get started. I'll have Kiana kick it off because this is her apartments and her space. Talk a little bit about why she's involved with the campaign, but I really want to hear from you all, and then obviously talk about my platform and questions that you'll have or things you're thinking about, or just share your experiences and what you've been going through COVID and the challenges that you're facing, the positive stuff, because I hear a lot of really great positive stories about people coming together too, so it doesn't have to just be a riff on everything that's challenging. So, I think there's a lot of good stuff that's coming from this as a collective unit in this community. So Kiana will kick off. This is her space, and then I'll take over and do a minute or two about what this campaign is about, and then the platform, and then I'll kick it off to you all folks to share who you are. Actually, let me start over. Sorry. I'll kick it off to the rest of you to share a little bit about who you are, how long you've lived in Claremont, and maybe some of the things that you're thinking about as you're approaching this November election, and then I'll speak. So Kiana, take it away.
All right, good morning, neighbors. Hi. Well, I'm here, I'm supporting Mr. Ceraso for City Council. I think it's important for us to all kind of get involved now. No, we all have small children or, teenagers in the community. So I just want to make sure that we're all getting the services we need for our family to be safe, to get benefits, to help everyone, improve their quality of life, and just to get our voices heard so we can have better opportunities on this side of Claremont. We don't really have a lot of resources on this end. So that's my thing.
You want to share a little bit about you and how long you've lived in Claremont, and a little bit about your background, if you don't mind?
Okay, well, I've lived in Claremont since 2009. We've all been here neighbors since 2012. My children have graduated from Claremont High School. I have 3 children now that are going to be in the elementary school district. Yeah, so I'm just ready to get involved more with the community, just to get more awareness of resources we have, and just how we can better help each other do better.
Great. Kiana also has made for the campaign wonderful face masks and T-shirts. So our logo, our slogan, I should say, is community first, and she put it on T-shirts, and it was a big hit during our launch. So she's been making all our fun garb.
Yeah.
And so garb and gear, I guess they were. So cool. Thank you, Kiana, and you for letting me roaming the halls of your apartment complex, sending out flyers. It was fun yesterday to do that. Who else wants to go next? Share a little bit of who you are, how long you've lived in Claremont, and some of the issues you may be thinking about going into the November election. Don't be shy.
I think she's muted.
So you're running for, what are you running for?
I'm running for Claremont City Council.
Okay. Okay, well, I would certainly vote. And didn't you run the last time for something?
Yeah, I ran in 2018 as a candidate for city council as well. So
Did you make it?
no, this is an open seat. I did not make it. It was a citywide seat last time.
Oh,
This time it's districts, and yeah. So how long have you been living in Claremont for?
about 7, 8 years.
How many?
About 7 or 8 years.
Where where are you originally from?
Well, we moved in from Hollywood,
Cool, cool.
and I love it out here. Really nice.
And then what made you you all move to Claremont?
These new apartments, the Courier Place apartment, and LA was so congested, crowded, so we needed to move to a smaller community.
Great. And then in your household, who do you live with? Like, what's your household? Is it you and your daughter?
Yeah.
Great. And then do you have more children than just?
That's my only child.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's great. And then what about, so you love Claremont?
Yeah. I love
Are you
it.
any issues going into November?
No, not.
Okay. You came on to hang out and hear what we're talking about, which is
I'm sorry.
you're on here to hear what we're talking about, just like
Yeah, yes.
great, great. Okay, well, it's nice to meet you, and I'm glad you're on this call, and you know, cool to have someone from Hollywood on this call.
Thank you.
So, all right, last but certainly not least.
This is horrible.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can hear him now.
Yeah, she just unmuted yourself again.
Okay,
Just for like a second, yeah.
there we go.
Okay, I'm gonna unmute you. I got your back.
Okay.
There you go.
We're back. So, Mom, would you like to say? I just wanted to know what the issues that you wanted to bring up, and I just know for the election, I'm not going to vote for anything that Trump has to deal with because I can't. So I can't even get started how much like I can't even with Trump right now. Everything he's done the past, 4 years and even before I'm not a fan. Never have been, never will be. I honestly do feel that he'll be reelected again just because I feel like how the system is and how people still don't see what the real issues are, and they're still pretty like self-centered and feel like somehow that he is for them when he's not. It's just, I just see that, I just feel another 4 years of him and everything that Obama has done, he has taken credit for or has picked apart and will continue pick apart. So that's my issue. And for kind of as the community wise, there is nothing really for us. I would get after school care, and now since schools are closed, I know people are going to lose their jobs, and the BLAST program teachers are on the verge of losing their jobs. So when schools open back up, I won't have a place for my son to go. Or when my daughter gets old enough, I won't have, daycare for her to go after school. So it's kind of, after school programs are really important. With my son being pretty much stuck at home, I would like there to be more stuff out in the community, but yet if I'm working and my girls go to school, there's really nothing right now and I've been in Claremont for 39 years. Like I grew up around the corner from where this place is. So I know when this place was actually just like an empty field, and this was actually literally the Courier Place where they printed the paper.
Right.
So I went to Sumner when I was the only half Black kid there, and my friend Ivory was the only Black kid there. So I've seen Claremont for the like racist, the kind of the underlining racism that I still see that nobody else really sees now, that has been brought to life because of Trump. I've seen it all from here, because it's just there's so much of a big issue that nobody seems to be able to touch on because people don't want to hear it. So it's just, I mean, it's Claremont, it's home.
And then we both have in common that we have I have a son with special needs. You have a brother with special needs. They don't, yeah, you know.
And it's hard because there's nothing really for them. There's really nothing for them. You can't, and they don't understand. Like, their whole life has been changed. Like, for my brother, he used to be able to do a program with Aim Higher. Now it's on a phone. My mom and dad are horrible with technology. So, I mean, and for my son who has Tourette's, he's just, stuck here. And I know there's not much that we can do about that. It's just, there's maybe some kind of programs or anything just to get the word out that there's other kids that are, struggling, that don't have backyards, that can't, play at the parks because they're closed, which I wouldn't let him go actually still play at the park because of this virus, because we do have family to think of. It's just been an overwhelming time, and this election coming soon, I don't seem very, I mean, I won't vote for for him, but I don't see, unfortunately, I'm at a place where I don't see much of a change, which I want to see a change. I just want to see a change. That's pretty much it. I just want to see a change because I've seen it get buried, and then we're here where we're at, and people are shocked. Like, well, it's because we never handled it in the first place. So that's pretty much where I'm at. And this is my daughter, Ashlyn, who's 19. So do you have any? She's just learning about everything.
I'm just getting information that I should learn about, because I don't really know anything as much as I should, but I would like to know.
None of us know a whole lot. We just figure it out.
We're just learning.
That's what you learn as an adult, is that you can learn, read and all that, and obviously that's all hugely important. But I think life experience and getting out there and learning from others and seeing other people's experiences and stuff. Did you want to say something? I'm gonna just call you Moto because I love the name. By the way, Moto G Stylus, is that right? Stylus? Really, I think that your daughter.
Oh, Shirley.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree with you as far as if anything has to do with Trump, no, I will not vote. But other than that, yes. I mean, you're not associated with Trump, are you?
No, I am not.
Yeah, because like she said, anything that has to do with him.
This is a nonpartisan seat. It's city government seat. And so, I have the luxury in some ways to not get caught up in ideological and partisanship that we see nationally. That doesn't mean locally we don't have a lot of, the instinct sometimes is to break up into tribes and have an us versus them mentality, especially in local government, where there are challenges around affordable rent. There's challenges about how you should scale your small business community, community safety, which is about policing. Those are challenges around that as well that bring that kind of divide a community into factions, and the debate happens. And I think this campaign is trying to represent is that we're willing to have that debate and have values and really present that to the community and say, this is who we are. But at the end of the day, if someone disagrees with me on affordable rent and they want less affordable, housing units, and we want more, and we end up getting more, then I'm still going to keep my door open to those who have disagreed with me. Because I think there are other issues that we can collaborate on. It doesn't mean affordable housing we can't collaborate on, but I 100% want to expand the number of affordable housing units in the community, for example, and I want it to be done now. I don't think it'll undermine the aesthetics of the community I think it'll add and contribute, and the individuals and the working families that come into this community will only elevate us. But there are some who disagree with that and say, hey, look, like too many affordable housing units might make this district, District 5 in the area we look at as the stepchild, the ugly stepchild of the rest of the city. I don't think anybody sees it that way. I even think people who are against affordable housing don't look at District 5 as the ugly stepchild. I think that's a false narrative that is peddled by folks who don't like something. And I think you just got to step back and not allow people, and I think you see this in the era of misinformation, where it's okay to really skew the truth. Even folks, there are folks who just take liberties at all levels of government, and I just won't be that person. I'm not going to deceive and try to be something I'm not. And so this campaign is really focused on 3 issues: affordable rent, community safety, and bringing back small businesses, and revitalizing the ones we have, and then bringing new ones in. And a little bit about my background is that my mom was a single parent in West Covina. I was raised there, so about 10 miles east from here. My father was not around. My mom struggled with mental health, bipolar disorder, where on a handful of occasions I was removed from my home because my mom was too ill to take care of me. On several of those occasions, police officers would come to take me out of my home and put me into foster care, sometimes making me feel like I was the bad person, the bad son, the bad child, because my mom was calling and asking to remove me because she was too ill. And I think at that time, mental health was much more taboo than it is now, which is saying something, because I still think there is a stigma around mental health in 2020. But we have obviously progressed where now we're having that conversation. I can go out publicly and say, I struggle with anxiety and I struggle with stress in a way that people don't necessarily see me as weak as maybe when my mom was struggling with mental health. It doesn't mean that all the resources are available or that people prioritize it, but at least we're able to have conversations where you're not getting framed to be something that you're not, right? And so I moved to Claremont. In 2007, actually, my mom had passed away from cancer, and she left me a little bit of money after her passing. And regardless of your partisanship, I took that little bit of money and went to go volunteer for Senator Obama in Iowa. So I took the money, flew to Iowa, and knocked on doors in farmland country on behalf of a candidate that I was really inspired by. So my civic engagement was triggered by my mom's passing, because I guess in some ways I just felt that life is short and that you need to go out there and do the things that you want to do. And I've always wanted to work in local government, but I was insecure. I didn't know how to do it. I thought it was going to be for Ivy League students. Only I didn't even have a college degree. I was just finishing up my time at Citrus College. So I worked on campaigns for a few years nationally, traveled a lot, and then applied to Pitzer College. And my story with Claremont begins at an early age, where my best friend and I would come up on Foothill Transit bus and go to Rhino Records and pick up CDs and then walk the college grounds, because that's what you did at 12, 13, 17 years old. It was fun. We didn't have cars. And I just never thought, I was like, these schools are so epic. They're so grandiose. And I just never thought I'd get in, to be quite honest. And so in 2011, I think the confidence that I had built working on Senator Obama's race, and then the confidence I had built traveling a lot and really getting out of my comfort zone, I applied and I got in. And I moved to Claremont, found a place, and in 2011 became a resident here. Got really involved because I was older, I was 29, so I wasn't really nervous about sitting with city council folks or organizing, because I had learned that from my career. So I was involved. I was off campus, so I was organizing that San Verdoza and Joe Lyons and all these council folks, and worked on several projects with them, citywide projects, bringing technology and city government together, volunteering at the Uncommon Good, where I mentored someone for about 7 months there, a young child, about 14 years old. And Claremont just became home. And then in 2018, I decided to run for city council like a crazy person, growing against 5 amazing other individuals who were running at that time. And this was after I had organized the first city council homeless forum where we held it at Pitzer College, where about 50 folks showed, where we put on display how well these candidates knew about homelessness. And they did all well. It wasn't, they didn't understand the issues or how intricate it was, but they didn't really talk about south of the village. They talked a lot about it, about different pockets, the pockets that are neighborhoods that were highly engaged at city council meetings or highly engaged at, commission meetings, but they weren't talking about other folks who are probably working 2 jobs and don't have time to attend a city council meeting or don't have time to be a commissioner or attend commission meetings. And so I was like, wait a minute, that's not how this should work. So I ran and we spoke a lot about the village, south of the village. I mean, you go on my website, we have articles about, we don't actually have the articles about that run, but there's a quote by the Claremont Courier where it says, essentially we were the only candidate that was speaking to these issues in a meaningful way. And it wasn't just, hey, there are folks who are poor down here, or hey, the city is terrible to us, because the city does actually do some wonderful things for this part of the community. They invest in Willow Park. We have one of the best parks down here, if not the best park. If you ask some of those, if you compare the parks, Willow is actually highly funded. There's a hockey ring there. The lights stay on overnight, which costs the city money because neighbors are worried about, folks coming in and out that they don't know. So there's a lot of investment in this community, but citywide, this community is not making collective decisions as much, right? I think it's another cohort of engagers. So when we ran, that was what we wanted to elevate. We wanted folks like yourself to get on calls like this and say, look, I have a voice. I want to know what's going on with the city, and I want to impact that outcome. And I lost and focused on elevating my business. I do media consulting work. So I work for a bunch of clients and do a lot of pitching and strategy with reporters and newspapers, and do a lot of organizing as well, and support a lot of nonpartisan candidates and who are running for office as well. And we started up a nonprofit this last year with my high school friend, Elizabeth Emerald, where we invest in community college kids like myself to get into government and politics, because community college kids don't have the networks, especially non-white community college kids, because they didn't grow up with those networks. They're not going to Ivy League schools. And I want them to get involved in government. I want them to be taking up the jobs and creating new jobs so that there's a demand for it. So we started up a nonprofit that way. And then over the last 6 months, I was a writer at the Claremont Courier, which I told stories about folks being impacted by COVID, being impacted by losing their jobs, being impacted by their small business struggling, being impacted if they were someone over the age of 65, feeling like they're trapped in their homes because they didn't want to get sick because they're more susceptible to the illness, or to the virus, I should say. And so when I was writing those stories, someone approached me and said, hey, are you thinking about running again? I was like, no. It wasn't like in my game plan. My game plan was to continue to write for the Courier. I really love journalism and really telling stories for others. But I realized that, this is an opportunity to be there for others and support folks while we go through the COVID recovery, and then go through the post-pandemic plan. And I decided to run, and here we are, and we're running a campaign that's inclusive. We're hitting up apartment buildings. We have a very diverse team of amazing folks. Kiana is what I call my comfort captain. So she makes t-shirts and masks and provides perspective. And Matt, who hasn't introduced himself, he does all the comms. So he tells stories of the individuals who get involved. And we're going to start highlighting stories as we go into September. I don't think it's a strategy to get votes as much as it is to get a strategy for people to see themselves in the work that we do and feel part of something larger. And I think, we're really being active, and, in a way that we weren't last time. So I'm glad you're all on here. If it's 3 people or 15 people on a call, everybody has a voice, and it helps me be a better candidate. So yeah, there's the story, and I'm getting better at shrinking it so Matt doesn't fall asleep, because he hears it every single call. So, but yeah, so the issues we'll be focusing on is affordable rent. We want to essentially build, I don't know if you've heard about the Village South project, but the expansion will make available, regardless of what is approved by the city, a number of affordable housing units. We're aiming to get the AR report, which is a report that says how many units you can actually build and what's possible, what's legally possible, what's environmental impact. Whatever that report says, whatever that maximum number is, we're going to go for it. And I think we're looking at trying to build as many affordable housing units as possible for middle class families to move in here. We're seeing this community tilt older and more retired, which isn't a diverse economic community as much as it is, diverse from backgrounds and living experiences. And so we need to be factoring that in when we're inviting affordable housing in, because it will bring diversity and it'll bring economic opportunity for the city that is currently lacking. And then the second part is community safety. There is obviously the murder of George Floyd has shaken up, I think, the nation, but I think what we saw with George Floyd and how the struggles of, African Americans, Latinx, LGBTQ, Indigenous, the weight of the identity, the fear factor that these communities feel when they go outside, and feel that maybe this is the time that they get in their car and drive down the street and I get pulled over by a police officer. And that police officer, as LeBron James eloquently put it the other day, where you don't know what that police officer's mood is, what their backstory is, and what kind of power play that they may be feeling they need to do because of stuff that's going on in their own lives, or the fact that they just are driven by implicit bias in a way that drives how they profile individuals who are non-white. And so this community, there's sometimes the argument, well, this community is not as bad as other communities. Sure, but it doesn't mean that there isn't challenges and deep-rooted challenges. When you have someone who calls the police and says, hey, I am a white woman is blocking my intersection. Please ask her why she is blocking my intersection. I cannot move forward. This person is not moving. And then the police officers show up and console her and then interrogate him. Or when a young African-American woman pulls over near Padua, where she lives, to make a phone call to her mother, and a police officer shows up 15 minutes later because someone has called the police on her to see why she is pulled over. Or if a person of color is walking down the street and someone just says, we have a sort of an ethos here that if you suspect something, call. And that person is not doing anything, and then the police show up and say, hey, what are you up to? That creates a burden on that person's identity that's completely unfair. And so stop data is going to be a big part of our platform to get police officers to reveal their stop data and see the number of individuals that they're pulling over. We are also going to elevate the police commission to give it more citizen oversight and give it more teeth, so we can hold the police accountable and actually participate in investigations if there is behavior that we suspect is just not good, unlawful. We're looking at implicit bias trainings for city staffers and the rest of the community to participate in, so individuals understand what implicit bias means in this community. And we're looking at creating a crisis response team that is structured outside of the police purview and probably through our nonprofits, because we have a limited budget that we can pay for because of not only COVID, but because it's a city government and it has limited resources to have a COVID response. So if someone like myself calls and says, I see someone struggling with mental health, it's not the police that respond first, it's someone who is an expert in that field. And I think that the challenges that we see on our city borders, over in a town in Foothill, or see in near the 10 freeway, if we reduce the demand for drugs and if we increase the capacity to support our mental health community through loving kindness and thoughtfulness, and not just like, oh, we're going to just kind of pretend this problem is going to go away by incarcerating someone who's eventually going to get out, and then it's a cyclical, feedback loop. It's super highly problematic. And I think as someone who has seen my own mother struggle and some of the challenges she faced with drug addiction. I know that anytime anybody was ever super aggressive with her in a way that threatened to incarcerate her or threatened her in any way, she would rebel against it. So I think we need to be looking at strategies that make sense, that come from a place of kindness and patience versus, oh, we just need to sweep the problem under the rug, because there are, this is going to just increase the problem. And I think one other thing is that the homeless population in the city has gone down, but it doesn't mean that the homeless population at our borders have. And in fact, Pomona, where our neighbor has seen their homeless population increase, and it's going to continue to increase. So we need to be supporting them, our Montclair friends, our Upland friends, our Rancho friends. Everybody in this region is a team. So community safety is a big portion of who we are. Mental health ties into that as well. And then lastly, small business growth. We have a lot of really cool ideas on our website about how we can invigorate our small business community and get them through the post COVID recovery and post-pandemic. One of it is that making sure we have a strategy in place to always support our small businesses if another pandemic hits. Mitigation strategies that we can put in place to prevent. The city actually didn't have emergency response for a pandemic, but they do have emergency responses for earthquakes and for, earthquakes and, oh my God, I can't think of the word. Let's just go with earthquakes right now, folks. But anything that requires an emergency response, there is a lot of that. There are strategies in place for that, but there isn't one for the pandemic. So we need to make sure we support our small businesses. Our Chamber of Commerce is key to that. They have a pretty active and progressive leadership team now over there. So really supporting them to expand so they can elevate small businesses. And that's important because if small businesses don't do well here, the services and government services that our community has will decrease. And if that decreases, there will be a lot of frustration by the residents. Tree maintenance, concrete breakage, and community safety are all tied to that. So that's where we're at as a campaign. So I love to open it up to questions or concerns or things that you like about the city that maybe you're like, Mike, don't change that because I'll be really angry with you. So anything and every question you have or
Well, I want to say I definitely think it's important for us to find a way to fight for programs to support the kids in the community.
Correct.
So they don't get left behind during this time. And the parents, support them with the homeschooling and lack of activities for the children.
Yeah, and the city is offering a lot of programs, virtual programs for children. But two of you have mentioned, that doesn't control for every single circumstance, right? If you have a child with autism, for example, or Tourette's, that they're not going to sit in front of a computer, and those virtual events are not going to necessarily always work for them. And I think this is a conversation to be had about, and if you have ideas, I'd love to hear them, Kiana, about, how is it during a COVID lockdown, individuals who are disabled, how do we create a framework for that? And then moving forward, we've talked a lot about, how do you make it a safe space for a child with autism who struggles with certain activities that other children wouldn't struggle with, and how do you create that out? And sometimes it's through city government, and then sometimes it's through non-partner profit, partnerships like Tri-City. And we've talked about it, but some of those programs that we've mentioned that I, uncovered for you, you already knew about, but they're all outsourced. And so that is a challenging situation, to be quite honest, like where there is a clear answer for. But I do think your participation and engagement and like working with folks who are making those decisions, including myself, if I'm lucky to be elected, can reframe how we talk about it and then reframe how we allocate money to it. But everything I've looked at the city, it's like if there's a small population group, maybe there are only 10 or 15 kids, and I don't believe that's true, but like 10 or 15 kids that have autism, there should still be programs available for those 10 or 15 kids. The same way if there's 500 kids who are ready to play youth baseball, for example, and there's a demand for that, it's great. Youth baseball is a huge part of who we are. It brings revenue for the city. It brings kids and families together, but it isolates a group of individuals who can't participate in that activity. And so we need to figure out how to do that. And I don't have all the answers for that other than to say, I think it begins with expanding our mental health service programs and starting to have that conversation and figure out what we can do to fund and support children like yours.
Right, and also the parents too, you know, because I think parents get so consumed in dealing with the children, you know, they don't have time to even track down the resources.
Correct.
So it would be cool if the resources can actually come to them.
And I think that's the campaign and elected official that I'd like to be for 4 years, is that people know I will go to them. And if I don't have an answer, I won't BS them, and I will search for an answer. And that's what I'm hoping the next council will bring, because I think the COVID recovery and the post-pandemic, there isn't a one-size-fits-all strategy, but you need to be paying attention to all the strategies that other cities are doing, what other people are doing, and collaborate. The attention, we talked about Rancho Cucamonga, for example, having a great mental health outreach program where they're doing things like changing the signs in their city to have signs, things where you mitigate and reduce the weight of a person's identity, where they don't feel they're separate from a community. Those things matter. And I think if you're not white, if you're white, you're just like, oh, that's great, but like that's actually a big deal because that brings the community together. So cool. Any other questions, concerns, assessments on my hat? Thank you. Don't wait for people to compliment you organically. You just throw it out there and then you get it. Screw it. I'm almost 40. But yeah, I mean, like, last thing I'll say, and then if there's no other questions, is that, you know, if I'm a 19-year-old, you know, in COVID, this wouldn't be an easy time for myself either. And feeling, you know, I know that high school, you have a daughter who lost the opportunity to participate in their high school graduation. So when we're thinking about young people, we're thinking about ways to get them, you know, once COVID is opened up, like them not to feel discouraged about the job market, all the way to being discouraged about who they are and the weight of their identity, right? And I think those are the things that the next council, and sometimes I think people who run for council will say, oh, well, is that a council issue? And I'm like, yes, it is, because that's the community you represent. And so you know, I'm constantly thinking of like, what can we do to rein in, you know, not rein in, but make sure young people feel involved with this community and feel like there are opportunities available. What can we do to create that through the city? And, you know, I know this may sound corny, but art activities, ways to participate, movies outside, making sure that it's easy for someone to walk from where you all live down to the village south so you can hang out with your friends, like creating a community that I call it the 15-minute city, where you can essentially move around and get everything you want, activities you want to participate in, that bring you closer to your friends, make it easier for you, especially if you don't have a car, which I imagine younger folks might have a harder time accessing a car because of how the economy is, or using their parents' car, which their parents are probably going to be using because they're probably going to work once we get out of the COVID recovery. So trying to think about the experience that an individual goes through when legislating or passing ordinances, because if you don't do that, then you're usually just coming from your own shared experience. And my experience in life is going to be completely different than your experiences in life. And if I just throw it from my perspective, well, one, I think I just make sure we had unlimited money for comic books. I don't think you really all need that. So, but I want to make sure that, you know, we have a community that invites engagement from you all, where you're like, okay, cool, this is great, but I actually have an experience that I think can make this even better for folks who look like me and who have my shared experiences to make the city more inclusive. So when those 14 families, more families move in, we don't have the same challenges that we did when you all moved in and when I moved in, and we get better. Because you talked about racism and what you've seen for 39 years. We've been talking about implicit bias, you know, for way longer, you know, and police brutality and unfair ordinances that make it harder for people to get access to affordable housing and all of that stuff. And I'm just like, you know, my generation and the generation falls, like, you know, let's just change that. It's like getting kind of old, man. So yeah. You're muted, so if you got something profound to say, unmute yourself.
Okay, I was gonna say, no, I like the fact that you're trying to focus more on, you know, the affordable housing. I remember when they were trying to do this housing on Baseline, where now there is housing actually. It was, you know, oh, you know, they didn't want it because it wasn't close enough to the grocery store, or there was power lines, or there was a strawberry field, but now they have it there. Or when they were doing this one, the things that people said about this place, like I went and sat in a couple of the meetings, and just to hear how people thought about how we were going to be, you know, a bunch of single mothers, kids in gangs, you know, and it was just it was heartbreaking. And I stood up and I talked and said, you're talking about an area that I've actually lived my whole life. Like it was at Oakmont, so I'm on Olive Street. I said, that's anywhere. That's anywhere. I mean, it doesn't happen so much here, but I mean, you can get that anywhere you go. But it was just kind of heartbreaking to see how they thought of us as somebody that was in my situation at the time. I was a single mom still, and with a mother of 3 young kids. It was just it was overwhelming. So I'm glad that somebody else, you know, other people are fighting for it, because there's families that are in my situation that I would have been still living in a 1-bedroom back house with my parents. And this was like the perfect opportunity for me. My kids went to Oakmont. I work at ECC on Harrison. So it was just, you know, this was a blessing for me. And I would love to have somebody else have that same opportunity. And also growing up here, when I went to Sumner for a little bit, when you would say, oh, you know, would you come to my house? You know, I lived across from the railroad tracks. For some reason, because it's closer to Pomona, it was considered, I was in the ghetto. I'm all, hey, I still live in Claremont. Like, I don't understand what you're talking about. This is, you know, there's something about just after the village, it still has that, you know, it's not for some reason, it's starting to not be the best area, and they are sometimes overlooked on things. I mean, I see that there's a park now. Is it Blaisdell? What is that one? There's one that they finally actually did, and it looks beautiful. And the one by
about El Barrio?
Yeah, it's right down College.
No, it's not.
It's Blaisdell.
Blaisdell. Okay, it looks beautiful now. Like I'm noticing now they're finally making those parks. No one can use them, but for the longest time they were overlooked. It was just kind of like the area, you know. Every other park, like you said, was beautiful and just lit up. I hear you, baby. I hear you. Sorry, my little one is just. So it's just nice to see that somebody else is, you know, taking on these situations. You know, these what matters to other people, and not just focus on Upper Claremont or right before the village kind of things. I think that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I've seen over the years, and I'm glad that somebody is actually talking about it. So thank you.
Appreciate that. And I think that I think there's always a response to change. And then sometimes that response to change is fair. There was a candidate, you know, not fair, but like you can understand it logically. Like there was a candidate I ran against, Doug Lyons, in 2018, and he was really about, you know, not changing anything. Keep Claremont the way it was when he lived here from start. I mean, he was like 60 something, I think, since the beginning. And you're like, but I understood where he was coming from in a way, because he wants to keep the Claremont he likes and he cherishes it. What happens is, depending on what the arguments he would make, then it gets cloaked or it gets wrapped in, what kind of people are you attracting? What kind of income status are you attracting? And then what happens is that, willingly or unwillingly, he then potentially could be perpetuating stereotypes And then folks who really believe that, you encourage them to come out and say, well, means that you're on Section 8, which means that you're lazy. And I'm like, and I had this last time when I ran where someone said Section 8 people are lazy. And I'm like, you know, I hate to break it to you, but when my mom was struggling with mental health, we were on Section 8 and she could not work. My mom was not lazy because she was also the same woman who would be like flipping hot dogs at Wiener Schnitzels in 100-degree heat while at the same time telemarketing. So when my mom was on, my mom was on. But when my mom was sick, she needed help. So don't be making that kind of association. So I just think there's an association game that's tethered to race, to income, and that's just wrong. And it's just wrong. And we're not going to accept that. That means we lose this election because we're not going off and speaking in ambiguity because we don't want to rub anybody the wrong way. Well, implicit bias needs to be talked about. And if it makes people feel uncomfortable, then so be it. And that's the game. That's what we signed up for as a campaign. Cool. Any other questions? How was everybody's coffee?
It was great. Thank you. I just want to make a statement. I think Claremont is a great area.
Great.
And at the same time, you know, my mom has been living in this area, I think about 7 or 8 years, maybe 9 at the most. And we came here and, you know, we ventured out and moved and went to Upland, and it was nice as well. And I think just moving out here, things were a little bit cheaper. That was almost 10 years ago. So things were a little bit, of course, rent has gone up a crazy amount. But I was thankful because with me having a Black male, I didn't have to stay in an area that I had to be fearful for gangs. You know, I was just like, this is a decent area where my kid could walk around and not have to worry about that, you know, not have to worry about it. But then as I became more acclimated with the area, a couple of times we've been approached by policemen just out of the blue, following us home, watching us, and thought that was so crazy. Then I was thinking, well, wow, I wanted to get away from an area that could potentially be harmful with gangs, but then now I have to worry about Claremont policemen, you know, about my son, you know, and this was before all this had came about, you know, and I was just kind of shocked, like, wow, I mean, we all know that racism exists, but I've never experienced it to that magnitude, to be followed home by a policeman, sit outside when I pull up adjacent to me and sit, roll down his window and watch me and my kid get out of the car. And my son, I told him, I said, don't say anything because that's probably what he wants you to do. Don't say a thing, don't say a thing. And we didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't speeding, normal driving. I just didn't understand why this man would follow us and watch me and my kid get out of the car, and just, it was very intimidating, you know, and that kind of put me in a different spectrum. Like, wow, I took my kid to, he's in a good area where he doesn't have to worry about gangs, but now I have to worry about the other gang, you know, the police gang, you know. And so, you know, and that was just a one incident, you know, but at the same time, it kind of imprinted, like, now I have to have that conversation. You know, my son works for Claremont, he works in Claremont, and I'm like, just try to be home before dark. Just try to be home at a decent time. You know, don't look a certain way. I don't, you know, I don't want you to have the braids in your hair. I sheltered my kids, so they weren't exposed to gangs and things like that. Thank God, you know. I've been able to protect them all that time, but I feel like they have to look a certain way. Even going to Claremont, experiencing racism at Claremont, I was just taken back because I just, you know, we know it exists, but I don't know. I just think that at some point, when do people, you know, kind of wake up? So that's really like my only concern. I mean, like I said, it hasn't been anything in particular since then, but 1 or 2 incidents is too many, you know, for me. But overall, it's a good community. We can walk around and feel some sort of safeness or security. You can live in nice areas and bad things happen. It's like that. I don't care where you move. You know, you have children. He's gone to school with children that stay up the hill in the $1 million homes who want to be a part of the gang life. And he's been approached by them. And I'm like, these children have no clue what gang life looks like. If you're staying in $1 million home, you're somebody that wants to do something, you know, that may be attractive, but you don't really understand the lifestyle, you know, so it can pollute, you know, I get it, but at the same time, you know, I'm thankful for this place. You know, it would be nice if we can get a couple of more in the area, but you know, that's wishful thinking. I think
We can. The Village South will produce that, and I think as long as we elect a council that fits into what everybody is saying on this call, and that's a council that isn't trapped in the past, but is really looking towards the future to invite more folks like ourselves, class folks,
Right.
living with our families right now because some of us are struggling.
Very much.
Yeah, all that stuff. So, so I definitely am. I think if people vote,
Yeah.
engage, we can get everything that we need. It's hard work and it won't be easy, and sometimes people will get disappointed and frustrated because maybe they wanted X, we had to compromise for Y, but I firmly believe that the next council has the ability to reshape the community, because I think the COVID has presented that in a way. And I hate to say that COVID is a good thing, but I think in some ways it gives you an opportunity out of chaos and sadness and you know, that you can build something new and enjoyable. So yeah, cool. But thank you for sharing that, by the way. That was really I appreciate you taking the time to share that story.
Yeah. Thank you for this forum and giving us a chance, you know, to speak our views. And you know, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not, I haven't voted in the past couple of years just due to, I just feel like just looking at how things are, you have to look at the whole situation. But this year I will take time, and you will be one of the people that I check off. You are running for something, right?
Yes.
That just goes to show you that I'm not there. So I thank Kiana for bringing me in, because
Yes.
I expressed that to her. I said, girl, you know, I'm not even there. But she, you know, was, Cheryl, just come see what he has to say. And I said, okay. So I like you. I see good things, and you have my vote. So
I appreciate that. And we'll make sure you're registered to vote too.
I am. I'm still registered. I just haven't, you know, but I'll go.
Address that you're currently at? Is that?
Yes. Yeah. But you can double check.
I will.
Sure.
I will. Of course I will. But I appreciate you sharing that story, and I appreciate you taking the time to get to know me as well. And are there any other questions? Or it's about 11 now. I mean, obviously you can stay on, but everybody's balancing home life and children, so I don't want to take up too much. Thank Last Drop Coffee, which is the individuals who gave us the coffee. They are our go-to when they're open, but they, like a lot of other businesses, have shorter hours. So they're not always they're not open for the hours that I'm used to. So we tried to get Last Drop for our Friday coffee, and they were closed. And I was like, what? They're open till 7. And they're like, no, dude, no. And I was like, oh yeah, COVID, thank you. But Last Drop Coffee, next steps will be that we definitely need support for you to talk to your neighbors in the apartments. Apartments are going to be a huge way for us to, we're doing a lot more. We're going to be doing a couple more apartment coffees in other spaces. We did West Arms, I believe, on Friday. Had a great turnout for that as well. And 9 folks, 7 of them that we didn't know. And so even though it's like 4 or 5 or 8 or 9, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. And so conversations like this just make me better. And then I get to intimately know you. We're reaching out. We have yard signs, so I can bring yard signs for you to put in front of your apartments. If you want one, I'm more than happy to, just to have fun with it, put it out there. And we've been having a few of them have been getting, thank you, Matt. Yeah, and our full policy, if you want to nerd out, is there. It's epic. I believe it's the most comprehensive policy in this history of Claremont. Matt maybe might want to humble me a little bit on that. He's been following candidates for longer than I have, but I'm going to just own that and say that it is. But it's a little bit of everything. We'll be adding more policy ideas. Sustainability is going to probably be our next policy rollout. and a couple more items. We're going to be adding items, the Arbor Verde, which is a huge part of this community, where, you know, the Chicano movement really sort of came into fruition. A lot of the activists who still live there were reasons why that Arbor Verde in Claremont, that space, eradicated gang violence, and they're there, and they shared their stories with me earlier last week about how much work that is. So to bring affordable housing, to reduce violence, to hold police accountable requires everybody to be involved, and this is a start. So I really am grateful to all of you for taking time and opening your doors to me as well. So cool. I think that's it.
Yeah.
And then I will go now. But thank you.
I think Ashlyn has something to say.
Oh, Matt, can I say something?
Oh, Ashlyn has something to say, actually.
Oh,
So she has to go to work, so we're gonna log off now.
Oh, hey, real quick, before you go, I didn't catch your name. No, it's Ashlyn, and what's your name?
Taylor.
Taylor?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And you're Cheryl, right?
Yes,
And is that with a C or with an S? I just want to make sure I spell it right.
with a C, Cheryl.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
real quick, follow us on Facebook because we will share about this conversation. So if you aren't, go on Facebook, Ceraso for Claremont, just follow us, like, get updates. Do that right now if you get a second. Adios. Have a great day at work. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye, thank you. Oh, now I gotta log out. This is horrible. I don't know what to do. Too over.
You got this.
Oh my gosh. I think they logged me out already.
I don't wanna